The late afternoon sun bathed the campus in a golden glow as I walked towards the tennis courts, my racket dangling loosely in my hand. The air was fresh with that familiar hint of salt from the bay, and the breeze danced through the trees, making them whisper like an old friend. It was one of those perfect San Francisco spring days when the world felt alive and teeming with possibilities. The warmth of the sun soaked into my skin, and I couldn't help but smile at the thought of everything ahead. Graduation just around the corner, future adventures waiting to be planned, and of course, the match I had later. There was always something magical about spring on campus. The familiar paths and buildings, which had once seemed routine, now brimmed with new energy. Each corner I turned felt like a new beginning. Maybe it was the thought of everything about to change, of finally stepping beyond the walls of this university into the unknown, where I could chase the things that made me feel truly alive. My mind drifted to the ocean, as it often did. The thrill of riding the waves, of feeling the raw power of the water beneath me, was always a pull I couldn't resist. I was already picturing the surf at Pacifica Beach, imagining myself cutting through the water, salt on my skin, the wind in my hair. There was a sense of freedom in those moments, a connection to something bigger than myself. As I thought of the sea, I felt the tug of the open road, the endless stretch of places I hadn't been to yet, adventures waiting to unfold. I barely noticed when someone came up beside me. There was a sudden awareness of movement, a shift in the air, and I looked up, squinting slightly against the sun. He stood there with an easy confidence, his dark hair tousled, as if the wind had been playing with it. His expression as casual as the breeze that passed between us. I knew him, vaguely, from around campus, maybe from one of my classes. But in that moment, it felt like he'd appeared out of nowhere. I studied him for a brief second, noting how he seemed so at ease in a way most people weren't. He didn't belong to the world of tennis courts and quiet afternoons. He looked like he was meant for something louder, more social, as if the noise and energy of a crowd were his natural element. It was almost jarring, how different he seemed from the environment around us. And yet, there was something about his presence that didn't feel out of place. It was as if he carried his own energy with him, effortlessly shaping the world around him. Without words, I felt the shift. It was subtle but undeniable, like the pull of a current you can't see but instinctively know is there. In the few moments he stood there, it was clear that whatever this was, this chance meeting, had the potential to be more than just a passing encounter. I felt the curiosity bubble up inside me, a curiosity that was mirrored in his eyes. We fell into step together, walking toward the courts, his presence beside me both unfamiliar and strangely natural. As we moved, I found myself more aware of the world around me, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the warmth of the sun as it dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the campus. There was something different in the air now, a kind of quiet anticipation that hadn't been there before. I was used to focusing on my own thoughts, my own path. But suddenly I found myself attuned to his energy. He carried himself with such ease, talking about his plans, his interests, in a way that made it clear he wasn't afraid of putting himself out there. He spoke of travels, of languages, of things that didn't align with my world, but somehow they intrigued me. There was a vibrancy to him that was magnetic, and even though we were so different, I could sense the connection starting to form. The courts came into view, and I moved to the familiar rhythm of warm-up, my body falling into the motions like second nature. But today felt different. With him there, casually leaning against the fence, watching with a quiet curiosity, I felt a new energy within me. Every hit of the ball seemed sharper, more precise, as if I was playing for something more than just a friendly match. His gaze followed me, not in a way that made me feel self-conscious, but in a way that made me feel noticed. As the sun continued to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt the weight of the day slowly slipping away. replaced by a lightness I couldn't quite explain. There was something about the way we moved together, him watching, me playing, that felt almost like a dance, unspoken, but undeniably there. When the game was over, the breathlessness I felt wasn't just from the exertion. I walked back to him, the court now empty, the air filled with that quiet stillness that only comes at the end of the day. I realized that in this brief time, something had shifted inside me. He had awakened a curiosity, a spark of something new. And even though I didn't know what it meant yet, I knew it wasn't something I could easily ignore. As we left the courts together, the world around us dimming into twilight, I felt a quiet excitement stir within me. It wasn't just the end of another spring afternoon. It was the beginning of something, and I couldn't help but wonder what would come next.